Welcome to Moms Connect, Not Your Daughter's Sunday School. Our topic is Complementarianism and Biblical Mothering, Part 3. By way of review, we covered these topics over the last couple of sessions: women in ministry, including the biblical stance taken by the Church of the Nazarene; complementarianism, which is the viewpoint that women are to be submissive wives and mothers, and as a reminder, this is not biblical. We looked at these passages from Ephesians and Colossians. We looked at Jesus' example from John 13:15. We looked at this passage from Genesis 3, the account of the fall, and also from Genesis 2:8, Ezer Senegdo, which is where Eve is created as helper, and the word also means strength, and we had a nice discussion on that. And we also looked at Genesis 1:38, which discusses dominion, giving, and commissioning. And just as a note, if you're interested in any of these, if you missed these sessions, would be happy to send you the YouTube link so you can get caught up and know what we're talking about. I also stressed last week and would like to reiterate again this week that while this understanding of women's roles is very biblical, it is completely founded on the Bible, it has not been a popular viewpoint. So because of that, this might be your first time hearing these things. And if that is the case, I would encourage you to listen, to take it in, to think about it, to pray about it. And if you have follow-up questions, I'd be happy to discuss them. And I want to assure you that if after that, and I have more sources, if you're interested, I have so many sources, but I do want to assure you that if after careful consideration you land on a differing position, that's okay. You are absolutely still welcome both at our church and in Moms Connect, and in fact, we want you here. So with all of that in mind, we're going to take a brief look at some of the science behind this whole idea. We're not going to spend a ton of time on science because in this context, we're really much more interested in what the Bible has to say. However, science is sometimes used as an argument for complementarianism. So we're going to take a brief look, and then of course I have more sources if you want more information later, no problem. So let's take a look. So what about maternal instinct and/or biology? Here's our quote. In 2005, Hyde rounded up 46 meta-analysis of gender difference studies whose domains included cognitive abilities, communication, social behavior, personality, and psychological well-being, to name a handful. Her goal was to determine the effect size or statistical strengths of the variables in question. For 78% of the gender differences measured and remeasured and measured once again, there was actually as much of a difference within gender as between gender. Differences between two women or two men were at least as likely as differences between any female-male pair. So the significance of this statement is that while there clearly are differences between people in how they relate to and interact with infants and children, they weren't gender differences. So our conclusion is that based on the findings of her meta-analysis, Hyde proposed the gender similarities hypothesis, which asserts that distinctive reproductive systems aside, men and women are similar in more ways than not. At the most basic level, the male brain is like nothing in the world so much as a female brain. Neuroscientists can't even tell them apart at an individual level. So this carries over into childbearing and child caring as well. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the science here. I'm just going to throw it out there, and if any of you want more information, of course, I have so many sources for you if you're interested. So let's see. While there are obviously physical changes in women when they're pregnant, what's interesting is that men mirror many of these changes in preparation for parenthood. So expectant fathers experience a rise in the levels of pregnancy-related hormones, prolactin, cortisol, and estrogen, in proportion to that of the baby's mother. Second-time fathers produce even more prolactin. And this is in the company of a pregnant partner than do first-timers. So this doesn't go away after the baby is born, as involved fathers continue to experience hormonal changes. And my source is the same one as the previous slide on this one. I hear that and I think, look what God did. So the dads are experiencing these changes during pregnancy and also during parenthood. And I just see, look what God did. God included the dads in the whole experience. So whether that's viewed positively or negatively, although I think positively, dads don't get left out. They don't get left out of the whole picture. Anyway, and I will just throw in, of course, that goes for involved fathers. Those who are absent or who are mostly absent, just not involved, is a whole different story. But for those who are there and showing up, God has it set up for us to parent together. Dads don't get left out. So that's the brief overview of the science. So we're going to briefly now look at sociology. So the question is, how did even secular society, not relying on these inaccurately interpreted Bible verses, how did they come to believe that moms are better suited for childcare than dads? So there was a study of fathers of newborns conducted in maternity wards, and so like immediately. And here is our quote: "For most of the behaviors his team measured, fathers and mothers hardly differed. Men spoke to babies in high-pitched voices and responded with sensitivity to infant cues during feeding. They also exhibited patterns similar to their wives in heart rate, blood pressure, and skin conductance when holding their children." The major difference observed was that fathers, unlike mothers, took a step back from their child's care in the presence of their spouse. Their assumption that a baby primarily needs his mother limited their involvement. So this assumption becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So when one parent gets into the habit of quickly responding to an infant's needs, the other is likely to accommodate that habit by failing to respond. This pattern then calcifies over days and weeks and months and years. So as this pattern continues, competency in one parent increases and competency in the other stagnates, resulting in one parent becoming better equipped at childcare just through practice and through the ongoing opportunity for practice. When the primary caretaking defaults to the mother, the father is automatically in the secondary caretaking role. So basically, cultural conditioning paired with everyday practice has successfully and effectively separated genders into differing parenting roles. Okay, so I'm going to throw in here, although I would hope anyone who knows me knows this about me. I love being a mom and I love my children. Not everything has gone smoothly all the time, of course, but I absolutely don't regret becoming a mother, and I am glad for the time I was able to stay home with our kids. So on this topic, biology does prepare both women and men for childcare, at least at some level. So with that in mind, it would really be inaccurate from a faith perspective to claim that God has not gifted women to care for children. God has gifted women to care for children. However, this gifting is not exclusive to women, but it's instead gifted to everyone who would become a parent. That's it for sociology, although again, I have more resources and information for anyone who is interested. Okay, let's pause for just a minute and have some discussion questions. Please share freely, but of course only share what you're comfortable sharing. Here are our questions. What has been your view of maternal instinct? Who has been the default parent, meaning the parent who makes the plans and answers the questions? Questions like, can I have screen time or a play date or ice cream, etc., and is responsible for daily routines and discipline? Who has been the default parent? How have you set up your schedule or schedules for childcare? And does this discussion that we've just been having on biology and sociology connect with your day-to-day? So if you would please pause the video for discussion and then resume the video because we've got more. Welcome back. I hope that was a good discussion for your group. So we're going to continue on with our discussion, and just to help us get it all in our minds, just a reminder, so far we've defined and discussed some of the basic ideas of complementarianism. We looked at theology related to this. We looked at several Bible verses and passages related to this, and then again how those tied in with the larger theology, the bigger picture. And then today we've talked specifically about some science, biology, and sociology. So now we're going to keep moving forward. And so just to let you know, it's really useful for us to have all these things in mind so that not only do we know where we are at, but also where culture and society is at, so that when these things come at us, we have some sort of filter, some way to process and even just recognize what it is that's coming our direction, and that will help us know how to kind of categorize it and decide how much influence this or that seemingly innocent, or maybe not so innocent, but how much impact that should have in our personal day-to-day lives. So there's a whole reason behind this here. So we're going to continue on. Furthering the complementarian agenda, this approach to motherhood often comes with its own celebrity moms. So if you remember, we talked about celebrity moms in our history section and mommy influencers in our history section. And really we discussed not only like just kind of the phenomenon of them, but also how they added more and more layers to our expectations of ourselves and of each other and of motherhood in general in our culture and society. So these celebrities, and that was just in the secular world. Now we're looking more at the church world. These celebrities often come in the form of pastors' wives, especially those from mega churches. They must be hardworking but not competitive, polished but not fussy, wholesome but not perfect. And as famous women, they must do what all famous women do and pretend to be average, subject to the acid test of relatability. So these women were living examples of the pushback of the religious right against the women's movement, and they gave credibility to the complementarian platform. They could teach complementarian ideals without coming across as dominating and self-serving like their husbands would. So with their large platforms, celebrity pastors' wives are portrayed as the epitome of Christian womanhood. So they became religious reflections of almost mythic American ideals of women as wives and mothers, pillars and martyrs in a culture divided over whether women should lean in or opt out. So to a lesser extent, I'll just throw in, many women in the role of pastor's wife experience these same pressures stemming from their local congregations. My evidence for that statement is anecdotal rather than research-based, but I know and I have known a lot of pastors' wives. So I say this with full confidence, in general, they receive unfair pressure. Along with the move of secular celebrity moms to online platforms, In the 2000s, a new cast of celebrity mommy bloggers wrote about finding God in laundry, friendship, and ordinary suburbia. Finally, this genre's newest stars were home and garden television network reality show rehabbers like Joanna Gaines and Jen Hatmaker, women literally building Christian homes. Or Shauna Niequist, daughter of Bill Hybels, whose latest bestseller asked women to be present over perfect, eschewing the stress of work for more time at home. Brief disclaimer, I am not immune. I love Joanna Gaines. At the same time, American culture was building and adding to the unrealistic expectations of motherhood. Church culture was doing the same thing and giving it religious backing. So, reviewing a little bit, mothers must now be vigilant, moral, self-sacrificing, child-centered, and experts in science and psychology. Mothers must be on guard against abduction or abuse. Mothers must replicate the life of celebrity moms and mommy influencers, including Christian mommy influencers, carrying the bulk of the responsibilities of the home and possibly a career, although this career must never appear important in comparison to their children or threaten the leadership of men. Mothers must serve as submissive helpers, shouldering the responsibilities of home and childcare in their preordained role, feminine role. Mothers do this not only because of societal expectations, but also because of religious ones. They believe this is what God expects.
Sweetie, smile!
The results are mothers who, although they are set up to fail, invest entirely in motherhood, regardless to the cost of themselves or society. Women have sacrificed their careers, their free time, their physical and emotional health for the cause of intensive mothering. They have also unknowingly sacrificed their spiritual health. Understanding and responding with love to a child demands abandoning one's own point of view, or at least moving the self slightly off-center to meet acute needs. Hence, the particular temptation for many women, particularly mothers, the temptation to lose oneself. This temptation appears especially acute when considering the cultural contexts of complementarianism and intensive mothering women face. So we all have all of these expectations that have been built up through history and added onto by the church. And if you're going to live up to all of these, you have to be all in, like all in. And as a result, many women today increasingly find their primary identities as mothers rather than as Christ followers. They lose their authentic selves as persons created fully in the image of God. They are even misled to believe that to be Christian as mothers, they must be this kind of mother. This belief leads to lives of stress and overwhelm, along with a loss of identity in Christ. Diane LeClaire, fun fact, by the way, Dr. LeClaire currently teaches at NNU, Northwest Nazarene University, and she was also pulpit supply when College Church of the Nazarene was looking for their new pastor. So she's right here in town and very Nazarene, one of our leading theologians. In any case, Diane LeClaire puts this misplaced identity in clear terms, referring to this practice as relational idolatry, and further states, when this happens, no longer is the home the means of personal piety or like holiness. It has now become a potential spiritual hindrance. And I'll just add, this one is hard. we are consistently receiving the message that family is most important and that we need to put our children first. And of course, family might not be most important, but family is important, like really important, right? So we might not be called by God to put our children first. The Bible is really clear on the serving two masters concept and how we're not to do that. The Bible is clear that we are to put God first, but we are also at the same time called to love, care for, and prioritize our children. This is more than being just about finding the right balance between like family and kids and God, right? Which I think a lot of us try and do. We try and hold those two in tension and just make sure that we've got it evened out, so in a way that works for our personal lives, but that's not really what this is about. This is about the core of our identity. And is that core being a mother or being a Christ follower? And of course, society all around us is telling us, no, your most important priority is being a mother. Your most important priority is your children. And very often the church is telling us that too. Or if not specifically the church, then all these other Christian influences, books and blogs and celebrity moms and whatever. But what's at your core? What's in your heart? And it's not that there's no room for your kids or that they are unimportant, but really it is, what is your first priority? And so we need to take a look at maybe what the Bible says about that. Honestly, this one is really hard. Hard to even discern what's in your own heart. And I would encourage prayer time about that. But it's hard to even just say, like for me to say to you that anything should come before your children. But taking a real honest look at where your life is, where you are at, and where you are at in your mothering journey and in your journey with God. And spend some time praying maybe about where your heart is and where God is calling your heart to be.
We're going to take a few moments now for some journal questions, and I would encourage you to really prayerfully think and process through these questions, and then share with the group whatever it is you're comfortable with sharing. Our first question: American culture, including American church culture, implies that a true woman is a mother first, sacrificing all for her children and family. Is this really what the Bible implies? And then our second question to think and pray about, journal about: what is your primary identity? So we're getting personal now. What is your personal primary identity? Is it mother, Christ follower, or something else that we haven't discussed here today? Where is your heart? Where is your core identity? And then as we go through, here's our theme verses, just as a reminder that we've kept returning to. But seek first the kingdom of God and God's righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Matthew 6:33. And then also, be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. You would take a few minutes, pause this video for journaling, reflection, and discussion.